This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Every single time I do that, I miss the first 5 minutes. Welcome, everybody. This is our last public meeting for the City Plan 2024 process. As I'll explain in a second, this is not your last opportunity to provide feedback, but it is our last of this initial series of scheduled meetings. I'm hoping everyone online can hear me. If you can just wave and make sure that you can hear me. I don't want to talk for too long without making sure everyone is hearing me okay. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Sharon. So my name is Kelsey Peterson. I've been at 2/3 of these meetings, half of these meetings, along with my colleague Paul Connor, who is not here. We swap on the meetings. I'm the city planner here at the City of South Burlington, and we're primarily working right now on the city plan and taking all of the feedback that we're getting from members of the public, from our volunteer committees, from our staff departments, and working to update our plan. So I'm just going to start with a little introductory presentation. If you've been to one of these meetings, it's going to be very similar, so I apologize for that. But I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page with some foundational information. So what is City Plan 2024? The City Plan is our city's overarching policy statement about what we want South Burlington to be and to strive for in the coming decades. It is updated every so many years, but the planning horizon for it is much longer. We think of it more as a 20 to 30 year horizon for what we're planning to do, what we're striving to do. You may see in state statute this called a municipal plan. Other communities may call it a town plan. Our 2016 version was the 2016 comprehensive plan. Those are all the same thing. Apologize for any confusion with the naming, but it's what's working for us right now. And the document in the end may be called something other than City Plan 2024, but this is what we started with our process of public engagement. So the city plan sets a shared vision for the community's future. It guides city council and city administration priorities. So what is city council going to tackle in the next fiscal year or the following fiscal year after that? It also guides adoption of changes to the land development regulations and capital investments. So the Planning Commission can't adopt changes to the land development regulations that are inconsistent with what the comprehensive plan says. The word inconsistent means different things to different people, but generally speaking, you want your city plan to guide how you are changing some of these other regulations as you move through the next decade. And as I said, capital investments, this also guides where South Burlington is spending their money, what they're budgeting money to spend on, especially any new facilities, any new positions, or things that are going to be continuing to fund. It also provides support for grant funding applications, especially at the state level, the state of Vermont level. Most, if not all, grant applications require you to point to your city plan or your municipal plan and say, this is the line, this is the objective, this is what we're trying to accomplish with the study, with the project, with whatever you're asking for money for. If you can't point to something in your plan that supports what you're asking for money for, your chances of getting funded are extremely low. And to that end, or related to that, the plan has to include some elements that are required by statute, some different topics that need to be discussed, but it also must address or discuss in some way the statewide planning goals. So things that are required by statute, there's things that are not necessarily as relevant to South Burlington as to other places, like logging resources or resource extraction. We have a small quarry, well, a good sized quarry, but we have a quarry gravel pit. Other communities may have more than that. So there's different pieces that are more relevant to us and other pieces that are more relevant to others. So why update it? We did it in 2016. Why do we need a new one? The plan is only effective for 8 years. It expires in February of 2024, which sounds like a long way, but it is not, because of this. Working sort of backwards from the green, we need to have final adoption of a finalized city plan by early December of 2023. As I said, our deadline is February, but most of January and December is taken up for the city council by their budget process for the next year. So I've promised the city manager that I will do my best to get this city plan finalized before they get into that budget season process. So I've said Thanksgiving, I say December on the plan on this slide, somewhere in that time frame. What that means is we need to be doing formal public hearings on a full final draft or close to final draft between September and November of 2023. There are formal processes at the City Council, and before that, there's a formal process at the Planning Commission, all of which the meetings have notice requirements, and you can't be altering the drafts until like within that notice requirement. So it basically gives us about a two to 3 month time frame that we need to be doing those formal public hearings. That puts us back to having a full final draft by the end of August. The intention being that through this summer, sort of approximately May through August, there will be further discussion and editing of that full draft by the Planning Commission, additional feedback provided by our committees, by our departments, and from the public. When I say the public, you are always welcome to email planning@southburlingtonvt.gov. All Planning Commission meetings and all volunteer committee meetings are public meetings, so they're open to the public. So you have numerous opportunities over the spring and summer to provide further feedback on the plan. So that counts us all the way back to the February to May of 2023. That's where we are now. We are doing public meetings like this one. This is the last of our 11 meeting series. We are getting committee input from our volunteer committees, department input from our professional staff departments, so all of our departments here at City Hall, but also the library, the police department, the fire department, the Department of Public Works. Drafting of sections and objectives, that's mostly done by me. I try to synthesize as best I can the policy directives that I've been given by the Planning Commission, and by all of these pieces of feedback that I've been getting from the public, from our volunteer committees, from the Planning Commission, from our professional staff. And then the beginning of the review of sections and objectives by the Planning Commission is happening now. We've had a little bit of bad luck of weather delays and a few issues with having a quorum at the Planning Commission, so we haven't actually gotten to any reviews of sections by the Planning Commission, but we are scheduled to review 2 sections on this coming Tuesday. So that process will be beginning, and then we're going to start going through the iterative process of their edits, and I incorporate them, and then they go to departments and committees, and all circles around. Yeah.
Will you, I suppose in their agendas, but will you be publicizing what sections they'll
Yes.
be looking at when, so if people have interest in certain areas?
Those will be in the agendas. So every agenda will say, City Plan 2024, whatever section, and each section that's being discussed will have its own agenda item. And if a section is an agenda item for a meeting, the draft section will be in that agenda packet. So if you keep scrolling down, you'll find those full drafts that will be considered.
Thanks.
Yeah, so unfortunately, because I don't know exactly how many sections the Planning Commission will get through in any given meeting, I can't publicize like a schedule ahead of time, but those agendas are generally posted by Thursday before the Tuesday meeting, for the most part. And the planning, yeah.
A quick follow-up on that. Will the drafts that the commission's working on be sort of like a track changes of the old 2016 Word document, or
No.
is it a brand new?
It'll be a brand new document.
Okay.
Brand new document. That's for a few reasons. There's some things that we're keeping and some things that are not. So you will see some duplicated, copied and pasted language, but we are doing some reorganization and some other, changes to the policy. So it wouldn't be an effective track changes by the time the sections get to the Planning Commission. I can already say they look red. So just to set the foundation for this conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our knowns. We are considering some facts that are known to us in South Burlington. And if you think of the analogy being a big container ship or a big barge, these are the things that are very hard to change course on. It's not something that we have a lot of power to change in the short term. So we have to base our planning on the assumption that these facts are true and that they will continue to happen in this way. For the most part, they can change a bit, but you'll see what I'm saying. So we're projecting approximately 1.5% population growth And that means it relatedly about 140, the average number of homes added per year since the early 80s has been 143 per year, but it has been going up, as you can see that little dotted red line. It has been going up over time, and you can also see we've had a couple of spikes in the last few years. So the average, there's some very low years and some very high years, the average has been inching up. So we're estimating that our average will still be somewhere in the 150 to 200 range over time. Our overall housing mix currently is 49% single family, 6% duplex, and 45% multifamily, which you can see on this little graph. The gray is single family, and the navy is multifamily, and the light blue is duplex. But since 2000, it's been a significantly higher number of multifamily units that have been approved, which is again the gray, over the navy or the light blue. Just a little more information, and these presentations are posted on our city plan website. It is also very similar, if not in these slides, identical to the ones that have been given at other of these public meetings. So you can also go online and see some of these more specific numbers if you're interested. Our population is diversifying over time, and we have a significant number of people who are speaking a language other than English at home and are foreign born. Each one of those numbers is about 11%. And 24% of households include a person with disability. Interestingly, South Burlington is expected to have a median age that is declining slightly, not significantly, but it's a little bit different than the rest of Vermont that generally is aging more than South Burlington is. A couple of pieces of information of land use knowns. Approximately 51% of our city is either conserved, publicly owned, or under regulatory restriction, or multiple of those things. About 41% of the city are properties that include paved and or built land. So it's not necessarily wall-to-wall asphalt, but like the school property is considered built. The Chamberlain neighborhood where single family homes on quarter-acre lots is considered built. It's not all concrete, but that's part of that 41%. But since 2000, approximately 85% of our new housing that has been approved, not necessarily built, because there's still some that has not been built, that has been approved, has been located within or immediately adjacent to the city's transit overlay district. That district is defined, I think it's a quarter mile from any transit line, and is used as a proxy for where we do want to be encouraging some density of housing to take advantage of those transit lines. And it's generally the city center area, the Williston Road area, and then over to the Shelburne Road area. A few transportation knowns. There's a lot of numbers on this slide, but the general piece of takeaway information is there's only about 2,600 people who both live and work in South Burlington. To me, this is an indication that Chittenden County operates as an economic and residential ecosystem, where people are generally, if they live in South Burlington, they'll take a job in Essex or Burlington, and it's not something where people are contained within one city. I mean, looking around this room, I know a few of you, and I know where you live and you work. And there are several of us in this room who live in one municipality and work in another. So it's just something to think of, that South Burlington cannot be situated on its own, be thought of as its own island. We need to be working with our municipal partners around us. Yeah, is there a question?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
As things are changing, especially with COVID, around people that are working remotely, is that reflected in your data?
It is not, and partially because some of our data is based on the census, and the timing of the census happened to be that it just doesn't reflect. It was a 2020 census, so it's not reflecting some of those things that changed during, March 2020 and forward. So there's a little bit of that. There's some of our numbers have been updated with further surveys in 2021, but nothing really farther than that. And they just have different margins for error than the census does. Sure. A few pieces of information about the plan itself. We are considering the 2024 plan as an update of the 2026 plan. No, 2016 plan. It is not a blank slate. We're not starting over. There was a lot of good policy in the 2016 plan that we are planning to build on. And there's a lot that we're intending to sort of ramp up and intensify, including adding some measurable objectives and some metrics that will help give us more of an indication of how well we're doing on meeting some of our goals. Last summer and into the fall, the City Council adopted a climate action plan. The plan's climate-related topics will be incorporated into our city plan. So that's a piece of work that was done by a task force last summer and approved by the City Council. So that those goals will be incorporated into the plan and aren't something separated or different from the plan itself. Relatedly, our plan will strive to be an enhanced energy plan. That's a state designation that gets us a little bit of some different things, some different benefits related to our relationship with the state of Vermont. And we intend to make use of the studies and reports that we have completed. The city of South Burlington is lucky to have a pretty robust budget for things like consultants and studies that a lot of municipalities don't have the opportunity to do. So we are intending to use as much data as we can and really make use of the studies that we have conducted at least since 2016, and there are a few that are still useful from timeframes before that. The last thing that I'd like to say about that is related to those studies, the plan also should identify what further studies we need to be doing. So there are some studies that were done sort of in the early to mid 2000s that need to be updated. There are plans that we have never thought we needed before and now have identified a need to have some more data to support our policy decisions. So some of what the city plan will be doing is identifying what further study we need to be doing in the coming years to back up our policies moving forward. So just a little bit about the Southwest neighborhoods. I know that you're all very familiar with the Southwest neighborhoods because you came to this meeting. But just showing the map again, or the map that was in, this is the map that we have in our online poll for the city plan, showing the approximate location of the Southwest over here, if you can see my cursor. The Southwest neighborhoods include some aging single-family neighborhoods, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just there are neighborhoods that were built in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s that are home to primarily single-family homes. There are some single-family homes on much larger lots. There are areas of multifamily development. There are a few more historic neighborhoods and significant numbers of lakeshore homes. The South Burlington's coastline, if you will, on Lake Champlain is located in the Southwest. There is transit service along Shelburne Road and some connections to local and regional transportation network, but as has been acknowledged in other meetings, transportation connections to the other side of South Burlington over to here in City Center are generally lacking. You mostly would have to, almost exclusively have to go some distance into Burlington to catch a different bus to come over here. It also includes Red Rocks Park. So Red Rocks, more or less there, is one of our sort of crown jewels of our park system in South Burlington and a major recreational resource for our residents. And there are also large areas of commercial land and commercial uses primarily on Shelburne Road, both north and south of the connection with 189. So we have some, retail developments north of 189. We have large car dealerships and associated commercial spaces south of 189, all the way to our border with Shelburne. And also just to note, it is also the home of the Orchard School, which is one of the elementary schools in the city. So with that, I know I speak fast and there's a lot of things, but the presentation will be available on our website. And again, I feel like preaching to the choir a little bit on some of these pieces. So the core of our plan is our 4 draft vision and goals statements. These are principles that the Planning Commission and City Council have discussed and reviewed and have preliminarily approved to guide the development of the city plan and the narrative writing of the city plan moving forward. So these are not individual sections. You won't see a section that's labeled any of these things, but they are the threads that are sort of high level enough and principle driven enough that we want them to run through the entire plan and every section of the plan as we move through it. So those four are inclusive, fair, and just, human focused, climate resilient, and opportunity oriented. So just a little bit of discussion ground rules, more or less treat others with respect, respond to comments and not to individuals, direct your comments to our facilitator, Joe Segali, not necessarily to each other, and value of diversity of views and opinions. And with that, I will turn it over to Joe, who will do a little polling exercise to start our discussion.
Thanks, Kelsey. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody again, those of you who I've seen in the past. I think one quick observation I'll make is this is the fourth of our sort of regional meetings, neighborhood meetings, and I think it's probably the best attendance so far. Mm-hmm. So it's great to see everybody here. Maybe the word's out. So we're going to start with an online poll, and the way that you do this, for those of you who haven't done it before, is on your phone or at home on your computer, go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and you'll see the screen pop up that says Mentimeter right there. Same thing, should be popping up on your phone. So again, it's menti.com, MENTI.com. And then when you get there, enter the number 5375-1456 without the space. That just makes it easier to read. 5375-1456. So is everybody getting there okay? Now you're all becoming experts on this. And we're going to switch over to that screen in a second here. So hopefully that's working for everybody online. And I also say, just as we call that up, for the folks that are online, so I'm going to ask a few questions through Mentimeter, and then we're going to have a general discussion structured around the four goals that Kelsey showed. And for the folks that are online, when you want to speak, what works really well is turn on your camera. That way I can see you. I'll get a visual cue that you would like to speak. And that has worked pretty well so far. So let's see here. Okay, so you should see this first question pop up. What one word best describes your mood at this moment? And I think you can actually put in 3 words. And this will be a word cloud. This is just, we're taking a temperature of the room and of the virtual room. Engaged and curious, those have been coming up quite a bit. Puzzled. Invested, great. Tires, it probably means tired. Curious seems to be like a pretty common question throughout all of these. We have about 20 people altogether. So on the bottom right corner, you can see the number of people that have answered.
Chilly and warm.
Yeah, chilly and warm when you get this many people in a room. I'm curious about if somebody wants to speak up and say, whoever answered puzzle, if you feel comfortable, what are you puzzled about? Yes.
I don't understand quite how the geographic meetings affect the chart, the plan. And I'm not sure. I read a bunch of it, and I'm not sure there are sections.
So there are parts of the 2016 plan and intention to be in the 2024 plan that are topic related: housing, economy, transportation, etc. There's also a land use plan, and the land use plan is organized by approximate planning areas, and the Southwest is one of those planning areas. So when we talk about our land use plan, there is a section for Southwest where we would discuss land use planning in the Southwest.
Thank you. That's a great question. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question here. What activities do you do in South Burlington? And select all that apply. And those of you who answered other, I'm going to ask you what, for some examples of what that is once we get through this. Looks like we're almost at everybody answering. And what's really common too is the difference between the number of people that live here and work here. And granted, this is a super small sample of people, but not scientific or anything like that. But it's consistent. We see that difference consistent at all of the 11 meetings so far, and Kelsey's data as well. And not surprising that people shop and recreate in town. So anybody want to speak up what their other might be? Yeah, Dan. Worship, that's a good one.
Volunteer.
Yes. Volunteer, yeah, that has come up. Yep. Is that what you're going to say?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. That's good. Great. Okay, we'll move on. I think so. Just to remind you what the vision and goals are, in a little bit more depth, maybe. So there's 4 of them, starting with inclusive, fair, and just, and that's about creating opportunities for all our residents and visitors. Human focused is investing in a high quality human scale built environment. Climate resilient is emphasizing sustainability for long-term viability of a clean and green city. And then opportunity oriented is being a supportive and engaged member of the regional and statewide community. So these next couple of questions are related to these, and then the second of those questions just will kind of launch us into the discussion. Okay, where is the question? Okay, oh, sorry, I'm gonna go back. Okay, I guess we're gonna skip that one. The
It
question.
comes up on the phone.
It's showing up on the screen.
Okay, can someone read the question?
It says, with the goals in mind, what one thing would you like to change about your neighborhood?
Even without the goals in mind, what one thing would you like to change about your neighborhood? Pedestrian and bike access. Sort of, I can understand that in the southwest quadrant in particular. Lots of traffic, lots of fast and high volume. More good restaurants within walking distance.
I got the fish and chips guy right down the corner.
Bike to the south. Is that, you mean like into Shelburne?
Yeah, Shelburne Road, yeah, the little corner of Shelburne and Flynn.
Across from Burlington Subaru.
Oh, no, I mean, someone said bike to the south.
Well, yeah, Shelburne Road it's the same answer. Different
Yeah.
question, but the same answer. Shelburne Road is the problem.
Redevelopment of vacant and blighted buildings, better public transit to city center, less traffic noise.
Yeah, I got one more. I'm trying to type it.
Go ahead. I think this will slide down if I.
My thumbs are too big.
And we're capturing all this, and it'll the staff will have it and put it into the comments, just so you know. Community center, less package theft. That's an interesting one. And car break-ins. That's an issue.
Yeah, Shelburne Road. Yeah.
Love to see fewer car dealerships. It shows how we prioritize vehicle transportation, protection from Burton plan for a new road, and then fewer F-35s. That came up a lot last night. Okay, thanks everybody. Here's the last question. So when thinking about the southwest area of the city, the southwest neighborhoods, which goals are most relevant? And then what we'll do is we'll start talking about the top one first. Okay. Looks like there might be a few more people. Yep, here we go, 16, 17. It's like we're sort of settling in on a ranking. I didn't think that it would be interesting to sort of compare this to the other areas of the city. go back and kind of see,
Would be good, interesting.
yeah.
I'm new to this, so I'm not voting on this, I'm not from the area, I'm just curious to hear. I think in every region, human focus was number one.
Yeah,
It's a consistent.
especially when you think about a neighborhood, right? I mean, that's about community and connections and everything, and being human focused is a big part of that. Okay, thanks everybody for humoring me, but this is actually pretty helpful. And we're going to switch back to the screen so we can see everybody. And so we're going to start with human focus. And so the question is, the plan is supposed to help achieve these goals. And thinking about the Southwest neighborhood, how can you make the Southwest neighborhood more human focused? That's kind of the questions. What are the obstacles to doing that, or what's even working well? Whatever you want to talk about in that regard. But it's good to kind of know about both those things. So what would you change? What would you kind of keep and build off? Yes, and when you speak for the first time, just kind of introduce yourself, just so everybody kind of knows who you are. Go ahead, Larry.
So Larry Kupferman. I lived in Queen City Park now for a number of years, close to 50. And I recall certain attitudes about our neighborhood that are not true anymore. But what I've always been under the impression that the city workforce and its governance, it does not take part in very active pursuit of relations with the city of Burlington with regard to Queen City Park Road in terms of amenities that could improve pedestrian and biking. Yeah. Because Queen City Park Road is primarily owned, and the bridge, the one-lane bridge is primarily owned by the city of Burlington. And in addition, we have a major structural infrastructure, not industrial, but municipal. We have Lake Champlain Water District, and we have a Velco line. And getting access to either the right-of-way, I just never got the impression the city can face working with those entities to make improvements on this human scale. Okay. Because it seems, and I think Shelburne Road is also state highway. So making any kinds of improvements like the crossing at Shelburne Road and Queen City Park Road took an act of Congress to actually make that happen, and it's just still terrible. So that's to me, there's a framework there of interacting with other municipal entities in a way that really represents our interests.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation and an opportunity too, right? It's like how to sort of make that relationship work better. Yes, Dan, go ahead.
And Kelsey, you can jump in here, but I wanted to sort of set the stage a little bit, and this might be like think of it as another slide about this neighborhood, but I asked Kelsey, I'm like, give me some population numbers here, and you can circulate it or post it, or make it look like, make a better presentation of the data. But it's the population in the South, and it's rough because it's not quite with the census tract, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think it fits with our experience. But of the total housing units, this area is 30% of the housing units in the area, roughly. 60% owner occupied, 40% rental, large chunk of single family. And then certainly a phenomena that we've seen is that it has accepted continuing growth. It's not just because there was existing neighborhoods there, but lots of newer apartment buildings, a lot more studio and one bedroom type apartment style units, continued redevelopment there. Yes, more banks. And I was on the DRB when that came. It's like, well, if he wants to build, I don't know why everybody wants to build a bank, but he's allowed to build a bank. So.
Maybe last week we'll make him want to change that.
Yeah.
No.
Pharmacies too.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just to me, when I think about putting the plan in context, it's like, this is 30% of your city population. Okay. So when you think about that, just, I'll say one thing about my hobby horse about the charter change, but we're a growing big city, and this neighborhood is categorically unique, and each of the neighborhoods are unique, broadly speaking. But when I think about human focus, this is 30% of the city's population, and it's growing. So, it sounds kind of petty, but it's pay attention to us a little bit, you know? That's all.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Lisa Yankowski, live Queen City Park. Our end of town does tend to get battered a lot by Burlington because of Shelburne Road. My neighborhood especially seems to get battered by Burlington because of where we are. And we got battered by Burlington because of Velco being where it is. And trying to get police presence down there can be very tough. Because of Red Rocks, we do have a lot of issues down there that they don't have in other parts of the city. So yeah, there's, considering how much population is there, how much is happening down at that end, in this area of the city, we are lacking with a lot of attention.
Services and attention, okay. Yeah, I saw there were some other hands, yes. And introduce yourself, please.
Janet Bellavance. And when I think about human focus, when investing in a high quality human scale built environment, really thinking about redeveloping a lot of the vacant or blighted areas. And that sounds great, but really, as we heard last night, really the need to redevelop with amenities. So redeveloping holistically, where we're thinking about pocket parks, playgrounds, green space, space for gardens. With growing population, there's going to be more pressure on our existing parks and open spaces. So I think we need to create those little nodes of activity in green spaces and little thriving areas versus just here's another building where more people can live on Shelburne Road or anywhere without those amenities. So that seems really, I want us to be thinking holistically about that so kids do have a place to play and people have a tree to sit underneath.
Right. Yes, then I'll go online.
There's a tool.
Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, sorry, my name's Keith Epstein. There's a tool I think that can help understand how human-centered a place is. It's called the Walk Score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Walkscore.com. And I think if we look at what are the metrics that they use to rate, we can see, well, how do the different parts of the city have score in the Walk Score?
Right.
It's one of the pieces of data that we're intending to include, if not directly, cited to, but if not directly called out as such, but to use in the update to the plan.
Thank you. Sharon, and then I'll go ahead, Sharon. You're muted. It's like the phrase of.
I think that wouldn't happen anymore after 2 years of saying that to people, right? I would like to reiterate a few things of what Larry said. I live in Queen City Park also, and I've been here since 1990, and I've watched, the neighborhoods around us develop. And one of the things that I'm really disturbed by is how what's going on Queen City Park Road is significantly impacting the human centeredness of the neighborhood, and it's sequestering it. And I would really want to reiterate working differently with the Burlington City Council. It feels like our city council has been auspiciously completely silent with Burlington about some of the things that are happening that really, really, really impact the quality of life here. The one-lane bridge, the higher ground, but also just we have a daughter who's 18, but when there was walk to school day at Orchard, we would drive the kids to Farrell Park to walk from there because it wasn't safe to walk from here to cross Route 7 to get to Orchard School. And there needs to be more ways for pedestrian and bike traffic to get from here across. We've invested beautifully in a lot of those new neighborhoods up on Dorset and Spear with all these great bike paths, but there's no way for kids to get there easily and to visit their friends easily on a bike from here to there, to go over the one-lane bridge to cross Route 7. And even when you're biking a little bit down Route 7 to get onto the bike path, it's just not safe. There's all these driveways. It's really dangerous. And I think completing that piece of the bike transportation planning would be really, really important, as well as sort of pedestrian along the road that's Burlington's road where Rhino Foods goes. It's not safe. There's not I walk or bike there a lot, and there's not a day that goes by that I'm not threatened by a car that doesn't understand the weird traffic pattern going on there. And I really, South Burlington needs to be a little more forceful with Burlington in terms of insisting that it care for us in a different way for the quality of life. And I just also love the idea of pocket parks, particularly as it grows, because we have the stress on our parks will get more. So, building around, with Hannaford's being redeveloped and all of that, just creating some places would be good.
Thanks, Sharon. Yep.
Hi, Steve Crowley, also Queen City Park neighborhood. I definitely second all those comments that have just been said. A couple of things to point out. One is Red Rocks Park is a jewel, certainly not just for South Burlington. It's a magnet for other communities too, especially Burlington, obviously. But those folks from other communities are using our great resource, and it would be, and I guess you could say the same thing of the airport too. It's a regional thing that we have a lot of impacts here because of other people coming in to use those resources. Another important point I think about this, Sharon just mentioned the difficulty of crossing Shelburne Road. I mean, that just such a big force, a big impact on our whole part of town. If there were better ways to cross it, pedestrian bridges, that sort of thing. I can't imagine a road crossing that would ever be safe enough. So, pedestrian bridges somewhere, grab that one off the 127 in Burlington, airlift it.
Something like that.
Another thing is, I don't know what the demographics are in terms of, say, affordable housing and racial diversity and other things like that. But it seems like the new development in the southwestern corner, closer to Shelburne Road, like by Shaw's and down along, and maybe new stuff that goes up, there's a lot of potential for affordable housing and maybe more diverse housing. And so to me, that means extra attention really ought to be given to those amenities that the wealthier parts of town get just because they have big lots and stuff like that.
Right.
So that would be, thinking, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that takes decades to grow. Then you're stuck with what you have.
Right.
So if those, pocket parks and other things, the fact that it appears to me anyway, that it has that kind of economic, demographic diversity, that it's all the more important.
Right.
And I think that is a plus. I look at all that as a plus, but it stays a plus if it has those kinds of extra amenities.
Did you have a clarifying question? Then I'll go to you.
I was curious, what do you mean by the amenities?
Well, things like parks and that, in a lot of places, it sort of comes with the territory. You have big lots and you can, you probably still have parks in South Burlington, but if you're in a big multi-unit building, then you just have that kind of space in between the buildings and that's it. But more than that, I'm not sure what.
Like a place to garden, a place to play.
Exactly, yes.
It's something that's done intentionally, I think. And I'll just quick comment. This has been a common theme throughout all these meetings. It's just the need as the city grows to have enough, open space and for whatever purpose. And so it's good to kind of keep hearing that. But yes, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is Stacy Pape, and we've lived in the Orchard neighborhood since '97. And it's great for us because we started out as a small family being mentored by the people around us in that community. And now we're such that, I'm not going to say I'm older, wiser, but we have grown children and we're now able to provide kind of the payback to the other community members that are coming into our neighborhood. And as some people know, we have a fabulous neighborhood and we're very lucky. When we first moved in, I could rollerblade on the road. Right now, our roads are pretty bad and they seem to not be getting much better. And I
And you
know
said you're in the
in the orchard.
orchard.
And we do have the kids that walk to school, which is wonderful. And we are lucky to have the bike path behind us. So I think we have a lot. I know for me, on numerous occasions, I've actually called some of the car dealers because they use our neighborhood to test drive cars, and they drive like a bat out of heck. The test drivers drive through the neighborhood very fast and not really paying attention. So, and the car dealerships have been great when I made those calls, because even though I don't have young children anymore, it's kind of scary because kids feel like this is my place to bike and walk. And so I do enjoy it, and I think we have a lot of really good things here. I will say that I know it's not a favorite topic of people, but to have a community pool in South Burlington would be a big thing for those of us that have small parcels of land or in the apartments. It would be nice for everybody to get a chance to learn how to swim if they so desired and couldn't get to Red Rocks or other places. And yes, fixing Shelburne Road so that you don't have to jog across would also be amazing.
Thanks, Stacy. Anyone online? Looks like Iris, I think I see your hand up.
Yep,
And if you're comfortable turning on your camera, that would be great, but don't feel like you have to.
it's broken.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I agree with everything that's been said. I live in Queen City Park. I am very concerned about safety, not only of the one-lane bridge issue, but of the park. I'm also concerned about upkeep of public lands in South Burlington. And the Queen City Park neighborhood tries to do its best to police, I suppose. That's not the word I really want, but at least to check on the park. And earlier this fall, you could see signs of folks sleeping in the park, drinking in the park, leaving garbage at the park, etc. I have found that the folks who come to walk their dogs and park their cars are usually keeping dogs on the leash. This week, I have seen 3 loose dogs in the park, and they're not Queen City Park dogs. They're with a person who is walking the dog. This whole issue of use of the land, safety of the land, upkeep of the land is really hot to trot for me. I'm done.
Thank you, Iris.
You're welcome.
Muriel, did you want to say something?
Who?
You're muted. If you do want to speak.
Who are you talking about?
I'm talking to, is it Muriel?
Muriel Moore.
Muriel Moore? You're muted. Maybe
Okay.
there you go.
Just joined.
I just muted myself. I'm sorry. I just was able to join.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so just, we're asking folks to turn on their camera when they want to speak. That way we can kind of keep track. So thanks for coming. So I want to move on to the next goal, which is inclusive, fair, and just. And I mean, I think Steve started talking about some of the issues around that a little bit, but so thinking about the Southwest neighborhood, again, like what are the opportunities there to make it more inclusive, fair, and just, or and what are some of the obstacles? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can see making it more unfair and inaccessible and unjust, simply because I do oversee Red Rocks Park, and my neighbors are constantly stopping to see if I'm okay, because we've had just, a lot of issues. And it would be nice if we could keep it for the town of South Burlington. Our poor park gets a lot of abuses that I'm not sure if the other parks in South Burlington experience, but I mean, we have people camping out there from out of state, from Canada. People from other towns have no respect for either the residents that are there or the park itself, and they leave their trash all over, and then, yes, dogs too. Burlington doesn't respect anything there. All once in a while, somebody might. I mean, when we were having an issue with parking for a Burton sale, a Burlington police officer did come over to try to help out. But, this is South Burlington's park, and South Burlington residents pay for it, and South Burlington residents have a hard time trying to enjoy it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Dan?
I think on the inclusive part, I think our neighborhood and a couple of the other neighborhoods in, now City Center, I mean, we're a model of inclusivity. We've got single family, we've got beautiful lakeshore homes, we've got old housing stock, we've got some newer ones, we got brand spanking new, what are those, 5-6-story apartments. We're welcoming of all types of businesses, big and small, some major employers. What's IDX called now?
That's GE Health.
GE Health, right. So, and we're a major transit corridor and all that. So on the inclusive part, on the just part, I mean, again, it's sort of a thing about like city resources. So like, I've talked about this before in the transit meeting, but like our transit overlay district is, it's a transit district in, I won't say name only, but it's kind of outdated. The frequency's not good. I mean, other cities would laugh at us.
You just happen to be along a transit route.
Well, I mean, it's got some service. I won't say it doesn't exist, but it doesn't, nobody, I mean, yes, people still commute to downtown Burlington, but that was the model 30 years ago. And I would love for the city to have the courage to say, okay, we'll stay in Green Mountain Transit, but we can do our own stuff internally too. Because there's a great movement along 189 to get over to Dorset and Kennedy and all that. That's how a lot of us all came to this meeting and stuff. And then to some extent about city resources, and this might be like creative things. So like, for example, the city moved heaven and earth to get that Tesla dealership. Is the city doing anything now to try to do a land swap? There are two other lots in that same area that have sat, I've lived here 20 years now. Those lots are empty right across next to the Hannaford. There's 2 empty lots there. City could do a land swap and, we'd have a community center there, or a little bit of a playing field with like AstroTurf. I mean, they do that in the slums of Brazil, those little AstroTurf fields for the kids to play soccer. You could go into Lowe's, do some shopping, the kids could kick the ball around. Or we'd have a soccer field like that, it doesn't. So when I think about city, we're 30% of the city's population. It's about time the city council paid attention to that. 30% of the revenue that comes in, and grand list value, because of the density we have, plus the commercial buildings. Yeah, we're an economic and social engine of this city.
Not to put words in your mouth, but it's when we've talked about this goal in other meetings, it's more like how is the area or the topic treating others in this way? And you're saying you don't necessarily feel as your neighborhood is being treated fair and just, and that's kind of it's sort of
yeah. I mean, even the planning commission,
totally valid.
The planning commission, I get it from a quote unquote, put more growth in here. But we don't really have very good transit. Plus, the city did not concurrently make investments to go east-west in that time, and everybody wants to just shift all the development into here. And it's like, well, come on, we're already doing our part.
Yep. Jenna, and then Jenna, right?
Janet,
sorry.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree that our area has a lot of mixed demographics, and that it is targeted growth area. And I heard like last night someone say, build it, build it, build it, and some conversation about not wanting impact fees, the new school impact fees. Again, going back to encouraging a holistic approach. If we build it, where this school system, I think that a school system is really a leveler for inclusivity, fairness, and justice, education. So if you have overcrowded schools, the things that are sort of the hallmarks of what people say they want to come here for, we think it's a great school system. It's great till it isn't, till it's overcrowded. And I think, we put up a lot of homes, those were 800 homes that got built, and those kids, there was no accommodating the impact that those are going to have on the city as a whole and different neighborhoods. So reconfiguring is happening, and but I think that we tend to look single focused, and a community has many parts that need to work together. And that's what I would say for the Southwest, that we really need to look at how those open spaces, developments, schools, all of those things that make a quality of life are looked at, traffic patterns, walkability.
Is there, like, just as an example, south end of Burlington, sort of, you think of that as a place. I mean, is there that sense of place in the Southwest area, South Burlington? You know what I mean? That,
Yeah.
or whatever, the hill section,
Yeah.
of Burlington, you
The
sort of have
individual
that.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, but not as like a whole, right?
We're not
School, I
integrated.
mean, Orchard.
Yeah.
The Orchard
It's a
school
district.
sending area
Yeah.
is.
Just a sense of identity, I guess, like a cohesive sense of identity. Maybe it's hard when you have Route 7 down the middle and it kind of splits it. And it's kind of big too.
Well, there is some of that, but Route 7 is the big divide. It's like when I was a little kid growing up, we really were, we couldn't go play with our classmates because we had this road. It was busy back then even. I mean, we're talking late 1959, early 60s. Yeah, so that does still exist. I mean, even though there's neighborhoods on the lakeside of Shelburne Road, they were still quite a ways down because the first neighborhood I think was Bartlett Bay that you came to, unless you went across Shelburne Road.
Go ahead, Larry.
So quickly, one thing about fairness is expanding inclusive zoning that exists in the downtown to major developments. And I think there was some discussion about that during the year. I'm not quite sure where it went.
Inclusionary zoning, like requiring affordable units?
Yeah.
And that is citywide now.
It is citywide.
Yep, that came through in the interim zoning process
So
in
the-
November of 21.
Okay, so the newer projects, the
Yes.
Shelburne Road projects will, okay, that.
Yep, there's a units threshold, like if you build a house or a building that has 3 units, like it doesn't
Right.
apply, but above the units threshold that I believe is 10 or 12,
The apartment building, right?
then yes. Well, and it's not just apartment buildings. If your development is 10 or 12, you could build 3 fourplexes and it would count.
Great.
It's not individual buildings.
The other thing about this is, and I meant to mention in our previous discussion, is the Farrell property and the potential use for a park and beach access. And overcoming all the obstacles for people to get there, because it's crossing Shelburne Road and it's probably everybody's gonna need to drive there because it's not a very walkable location.
Does everybody know what you mean?
No.
Sorry. Farrell Park?
State.
The
Farrell
estate.
property,
Farrell
meaning
The last remaining open space in our area is the Farrell property.
just
Where's
south
But
of.
it's not,
We don't
it's
know
not
about
Farrell
it.
Park.
It's the Farrell Estate.
Yeah, he's talking about, so where,
If you go down Holmes Road, it is the large open property to the north of that area.
Sort of southwest of the movie theater.
yeah,
South-
south of the movie theater.
Sort of southwest to west of the movie theater. It actually does go all the way up to the edge of Queen City Park,
It's a massive
on the
parcel.
lakeside.
Yeah,
Privately owned.
Okay.
Somewhere
I
in the
think I saw
100
that
acre.
on- yeah.
except it's under the hands now, looks like, of the Larkin, which is very scary.
Okay. So I think.
Well, there's a couple
No.
crossings.
Okay, we
there.
got
You
us,
have the
we,
Railroad and then.
I think we got the point, but Nora, do you have a,
I just wanted to just say that I do things and actually, I can't think of who was up there. One of the participants up there, he's gone now, did mention that, and is that, the neighborhoods do have a very, I would say I live in the Orchards neighborhood. And it does have a very much a sense of place, especially around the park, the Samansky Park. It's just, just wonderful. And I think that's why, part of it is kind of what, because I know what a neighborhood really feels like, it's like I want that for the other side of the road if you end up putting housing there. Like I think it's just a huge equity issue. And I know, Janet, you've said it already, and a couple other people have said it, is that we're not building housing, we're building neighborhoods. And really, and then the other piece just to add around transportation is, if we start making things denser and we start encouraging people to walk, we have to everybody's gonna get out of their car and walk that area, right? Because you can't get to Hanover's very, you can get to Hannaford's from Shelburne Road, but it's not great for a walker, right? You know, it's not great at all for a walker. The bus stop is not, you know, people are driving by really quickly, and then don't even try to cross Shelburne Road with small children to get them to another bus stop. You know, it's just, we definitely need a pedestrian. I think the best one would be that intersection where Orchard School, where you would have the turn in for Orchard School, is to put a pedestrian over across that. But it's gonna, the other piece I just want to say, it's gonna take money. Like there's not a lot of, there isn't a lot of open land, and I just really think that you're gonna have to redo things, which is expensive, and so it's gonna take an investment, and you might have to buy some land or swap land. I don't know how that works, but what Dan mentioned, but there's gonna need to be some creativity of like, okay, this is kind of the plot we need to kind of fix, you know, that it's gonna be very hands-on.
It seems like to me that you're gonna need some planning, like some
huge planning,
some master planning to kind of figure this all out.
And there's a cemetery in the middle of everything. I don't know if you guys realize that.
So go ahead, Tina.
Which is also an opportunity for open space.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends on who you are.
Yeah, one small idea to improve the equity, you know, some of our bus stops have a place you can stand that's sheltered, but not everyone does. And I think that would be a pretty small investment to make sure that every place the bus stops has a covered shelter, place to leave your bike. So,
thanks. Sharon?
You're muted, Sharon.
Spend every day on Zoom. You think I'd know already. As I was listening, I would just, I don't have a lot more more things to add. I would just kind of highlight, in my mind, when you think about inclusive, I think about transportation, public transportation, pedestrian, and the connecting of the neighborhood so people can walk, because that's how you build connections with people, and inclusivity is through that, particularly for people who don't have a car or a way to get around. So I would just highlight that. And then I don't know, this probably isn't part of our plan, but some of it also has to do with what the city does in terms of events. Right now, our events are really Christian focused around Easter eggs and Christmas lights. And we have a lot of people that are not Christian in our neighborhoods, you know, and I think inclusivity would also be part of what kind of events do we hold? And how do we include other peoples of other backgrounds and religions into city celebrations? And I think that would be really important to pay attention to.
Great.
That is part of the plan. Thank you, Sharon. Or not that statement in particular, but that sort of topic, like how do we build community? How does the city fund events, and what do we emphasize? It's not just land use. It is some of those other sort of non-land things. So
yeah, and a lot of the big events are Christian focused, and that's not super inclusive. So
one other thing I think following up on Sharon's idea, but is, you know, the city puts on the food trucks at Dorset Park, and I get it, and it's a great event. People all come together. How do you get there? You got to drive to get there. And I don't want to replicate things in Burlington, but there's no reason the rec department in the city couldn't organize a bunch of food trucks at Farrell Park, or heck, get super creative. And the city kind of did this at the U-Mall parking lot a couple years ago with lights. Oh no, there was the people getting the permit to put up a couple of food trucks in one location. But like think outside the box and say, okay, we're going to have a neighborhood party, and it's going to be at Farrell Park. You know, like in a couple of months when all the renovations and fixes are done to the dog park there.
So we're working on it.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. So anyway, but like thinking, because that's a way to draw people into the community, you know, and have the library mobile there, and you know, and build that sense. We have it a little bit in Eastwoods because it's a small little neighborhood. We all know each other because we all walk around in these little, like our 4 blocks, and say hi. We have a neighborhood party every year, and people live there a long time. So there are these, we all have these little clusters of neighborhoods that are long established, which is a great part about living there and stuff. So
we've actually had that in our neighborhood as just organized by the neighborhood you know, like I see it come out on Facebook, there's gonna be a food truck, you know, and it's
Yeah, you know,
fun.
just because it's called the city plan, it doesn't mean the city has to do everything. And,
Yeah.
you know, but I, you know.
But in terms of drawing, and I think about all the folks in the Farrell apartments with a lot of that Section 8 housing, I think, in that area. And there's one little tiny playground that that somebody coerced out of the developer, but there really isn't like much garden space or things like that.
So just to note that one thing that has changed, and part of the interim zoning process that I noted before, there are more requirements now than there have been in the past for when a property is developed, to require, they're called site amenities or civic spaces. So larger developments are required to have larger or more square footage of some of these things. So that is something that we've attempted to do in updates to the LDRs, that when new things go in, you are required to allocate a certain amount of your space to some of these, you know, playground spaces, picnic spaces, parklet or pocket park spaces. And it all scales with sort of the size of what you're doing. But that is something that is now part of the site plan and or subdivision standards for new things. It doesn't address things that were developed before that went into place, but that is something that has changed in the last few years.
Go ahead, Nora. Yeah.
Just real quick, just because he was talking about Farrell Park. I know I came up last night, but does the city have any say in, because the Chittenden Correctional Facility, are they because I know they were talking about building another women's facility. Do you have any say about what happens to that once it's done? Probably not, right?
For a new facility or for the use of the current facility?
Well, gosh, you know, if they were to build another facility, not on that piece, I don't think they could fit a large enough facility on that piece of land. Gosh, that could be just, I mean, the building's horrible, so I think that would make a nice park, right? You know what I mean? That would be the perfect spot, really, you know, but I don't see that going anywhere, but you know, I just want to dream, you know.
If a new prison ever gets built, then do something else with that.
That was actually kind of a swampy area, and we had no say over it. That was the governor of the state of Vermont, because South Burlington fought it tooth and nail.
Yeah.
Said that's where it's going.
I have some other hands up, so I just want to go ahead, Steve. And
I'm not sure if this is the part where to bring this up, but talking about you know, connecting neighborhoods and whatnot. I know that at various times the idea of establishing a parallel pathway parallel to Shelburne Road in back, you know, where somewhere between you know, like in the road that runs between Lowe's and up to the movie theater, and even continuing that further south would be great. But if that were developed as pedestrian and bike access, which it isn't great right now, but it could be, especially if you sort of connected it to, you know, made some kind of an effective connection there with Hannaford's. I mean, you're taking your life in your hands if you walk south from Hannaford's and that back, you know, behind Burger King. Is that what that is? Yeah, that's a little scary right there. So that would, to me, that would be a great alternative to, you know, biking south on Shelburne Road, for example. And you wouldn't have to develop it as a full, you know, passenger vehicle type of pathway. It could be dedicated for pedestrian and bikes.
Janet, and then I'll
one of the things that our neighborhoods have, which is a real benefit, is a lot of open space that's UVM land owned. And I don't think we can take any of that open space for granted, that they own over 500 acres in the city. And that's something that the city should be really aware of in terms of when you were saying, I forget your name, Nora, about, you know, we're going to need some space and all, but just Eastwoods, you know, other towns have town forests and things, but Eastwoods is owned by UVM up at the top of Root Park, where we see all our neighborhood and other connecting neighborhoods use that area for recreation and trails and all sorts of things. So we use that as an amenity and really can't take that for granted. So if the city somehow in the comprehensive plan can be proactive in communication and conversations with UVM.
Thanks.
Can I ask, do you know if that piece of land that comes, is that UVM owned, the one that's right across from East Woods, where they sometimes,
Yes.
years ago, they put, that's what I was thinking.
The
Yeah,
cornfield and all the
yeah.
way up to the white barn.
Yeah,
all
that's
those
what I thought.
fields.
Wheel up her.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my name is Janice, and I'm actually a Burlington resident. I have
Janice, what is your last name?
Ellis. Thank you. I have a condo on Austin Drive, and the phase of our development actually borders Red Rocks Park. And I'm right around the corner from Queen City Park, so I consider myself a neighbor.
You do too.
I would like to encourage the city of South Burlington to keep higher ground at their current location. I go to Red Rocks Park, and it's already, like people have said, overused, and I'm concerned that what they're proposing on Queen City Park Road will just, increase that problem. And traffic. There's already been, in the one-lane bridge, there's already been, in the last year, 2 accidents that were pretty severe. I just can't see how a venue that accommodates 1,500 people plop down in the middle of a residential area is going to work. And I have concerns about traffic and the park and my Queen City Park neighbors. So if we can encourage them to stay in their current location, that would be great.
Thanks. I want to go online. Muriel, did you want to speak?
Yes. What I wanted to do was to just say that I lived on Kerry Lane, and currently our neighborhood is not scheduled to have direct access to Hubbard Park, and I feel that should be a priority. Crossing Spear Street at the Pheasant Way intersection is challenging, to say the least. I feel what's needed is a safe way for pedestrians and bicyclists to access the park directly without having to cross at Nolan Farm Drive. So I would like to just simply urge that to be included in the upcoming city plan.
Thank you. So I want to switch gears here to the climate resilient goal. And it's the same question, thinking about your neighborhoods, how to make them more climate resilient, what role might the neighborhoods play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, same sort of overall question. Any thoughts about that? Yeah, Steve.
Well, one thing would be to develop some more community access solar, like large collective, so people don't, so it's not limited to people who can put it on their rooftop.
Right.
And especially multifamily. I mean, you get to that part of the story too. So if we could develop more of that in the community, that would be great. That connecting south of a bike path, as I was mentioned before, would be great. Another thing is in terms of resilience, thinking of the fact that climate change is happening and things are not going to get better in the big picture, they're going to get tougher. And one of the big issues there, I mean, if you think sort of nationally, globally, water and food are going to be huge issues. I don't think we have to worry about water as much in our community, but food we may, because we import so much of our food from places that are threatened with drought.
Right.
And so, and that's just going to become more and more of a concern. So I think it would be really wise for the city to invest in agricultural land that will remain agricultural, maybe rent it out to somebody to grow food on for now and not worry about it until it becomes a crisis, but eventually have it as a resource that's available to turn into community gardens or community run on a larger scale. But put that land aside find land aside for food for the future. I think our children and grandchildren are going to need that.
Interesting, yeah. I'm going to go Stacy, and then I'll come back to you.
So this is potentially a small thing, but I know in the orchards, we've been losing a lot of trees because our houses were built in the 50s and they put trees there. And so we have birches and other trees that have had to come down because they're old and incapable of staying. It would be nice to consider the city doing some kind of either encouragement or an incentive to put more trees on the properties, just because it is helpful.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see fewer and fewer of them.
Are they just dying from old age? Is that,
Yeah.
They're dying from old age, and our soil, especially where I am, is very, very sandy. So it's hard to, but it's sad to lose the birches. But and they put in a lot of scrub. Okay, I shouldn't call them scrub plants. Sorry, some invasive plants when our houses were first built, because they were pretty, but not the best things to have in the neighborhood.
Thanks. Yeah. Lisa?
I can see a great, I mean, I have to say our area with all that commercial, the buildings, flat roofed, great spots for a lot of solar panels. I mean, we can't do it so much in my neighborhood. I've already checked, they won't do one on my house, but yeah, you've got all those buildings that would be prime for solar panels. And I was very mad at the Energy Committee, I think that's who it was, who proposed trying to, and I don't think it's right, those of us who have older homes and penalizing us if we, have oil for heat or propane for heat or natural gas for heat. I mean, my neighborhood's very limited what we can do down there, just because it's an old neighborhood and the houses are close together.
Thanks. Dan, yeah.
Well, I'll go back to the transit thing, but you got 30% of the population. You got a boatload of traffic, not just internally, but everybody who commutes through, and people who live elsewhere and drive through. But it's like, if this is the transit overlay district, as well as Shelburne Road, Williston Road, and other city center area, if this is, let's make it legit. And so when I think about that traffic flow, how things work, so frequency of travel, because that's what makes a good bus service. Oh, okay, missed it, only 20 minutes, I get the next one or something. And then I think too, just about, definitely the safe crossings. And in some ways also to think just, I don't know if it's it's a little bit of a traffic calming exercise or things to do to just, well, we're spending $9 million on a bridge over the interstate on the hope that some UVM kids will stumble down the hill and go check out city center. It's like, can we just put up a little, you drive through New Jersey and you'll see like some little pedestrian bridge overs because enough people needed to get from one side to the other. So again, it's about investment. If this is where 30% of the city lives, then the city makes investment and goes, oh, let's welcome people to move back and forth across Shelburne Road freely, because we do have lots of grocery stores and jobs and other opportunities. And we have definitely a lot of low income population too.
Nora?
Just piggyback when you said the grocery stores, like I would love to see some really truly affordable apartments down there. I can remember years ago, there was a young man who worked at the Hannaford's, and when the Larkin building left, and then they put that beautiful one. I mean, I know it might have had some issues, but he had to leave his job because there was no place to live.
Yeah.
He walked to work. And it'd be nice if you worked at Hannaford, you could maybe, if you really wanted to, live down the road,
Right. Janet?
At the state level, they have the downtown designations, development center designations, or I think what used to be neighborhood development. And that designation triggers incentives for priority housing development. And 20% of that is affordable. And I know what in South Burlington right now, we have city center as our area. But we're bisected by this interstate or cut, and it would make sense that we would request or appeal to have that Shelburne corridor be a downtown designated development center. I think that would make a lot of sense in terms of if the density of the housing is there, but then also to get affordable housing and some of the amenities that we need.
Right, so that's something that could potentially be explored. And again, I'll just go back to this, the need to do some planning to kind of set the groundwork for all that. You can't just go say, we'd like this to be a designated center. There has to be, a plan that shows how you're going to kind of make it all come together. So, sorry, losing track at Steve.
Unless there's somebody else, I already spoke.
Well, let me just ask, anybody online? Don't be shy. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Here comes somebody.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Loretta.
I'll just throw out a crazy idea around the issue of climate, since you guys got me thinking. And that's,
Loretta was starting to speak.
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Not a problem.
My apologies.
We'll hit you next. Yeah.
That's perfectly fine,
No
Sharon.
problem.
Not a problem. So one of the things that I think about is the solar panels that provide shade in the parking lot at the Eco Center without seeming to reduce the number of parking spaces available. And, when I go, to the grocery store, I find, if there's a tree here and there in the parking lot, that there's always a car parked in the shade by the tree. And I think that people look for, a shady spot to park. And if we could kind of use the solar panels to provide shade, it could give us, a win-win in getting, shade and some electricity.
Yeah, great, thanks. Sharon, did you want to add anything?
It just got me thinking when you named it as sort of the waterfront of South Burlington, and I was thinking climate resiliency is also how in the warming summers we can reduce energy use, which is going to be increasing with air conditioning now since we never used to need it. But also, like, when you think about our water resources for recreation and trees, are we doing really good planning for a public pool, but also, how people can get to the water and cool themselves, in addition to the parking lots that the other person said. So it opened my mind into thinking in a different way that I hadn't quite gotten there yet. So.
Thank you. Steve?
Again, so it seems to cross some of these different areas, but some communities in Vermont have been using or exploring microtransit, smaller vehicles, not like a big bus, but a van or a large van that might be accessible using an app on demand kind of, or even smaller routes that might make a loop through Orchard neighborhood, through or down to Queen City Park, or on some kind of schedule, so people could get up to the shopping, or to a bus line,
right.
Or so and what was the other thing? Oh yes, climate resilience. When you think about heat and hot spells and people's health, I think that this is going to be a big issue in a lot of ways. I mean, maybe it's about rethinking how much air conditioning we put in our schools, because that can be really hot, when you stretch into the June timeframe or May. Now it's going to be May and it's going to be into October. So and for lots of people in South Burlington who are on city payroll, work outdoors. the rec programs, all the kids at the rec programs and camps. And there are going to be more and more of those kinds of hot spells that they have to deal with. And so the city ought to be thinking about how to handle that. Whether there are cool space options for people, anticipate that people who work outdoors are going to need more breaks. I mean, that's going to affect the budget and what we can do with roads and things. It's a huge issue, and it will affect certain parts of our population more than others, right? Elderly, younger people, people with respiratory problems. So all those things sort of figure in, and they tend to be overlooked when you think about, well, climate resilience means more solar panels. It really means living with it.
And there's two sides to it.
Yeah.
There's mitigating it and there's adapting.
Yeah.
So we're at time for this meeting. It's 8:30, but maybe we can just go another five minutes or so because we didn't hit the last goal. But go ahead and.
I'm thinking about community gardens. They connect with so many different aspects of the things we've talked about tonight. And South Burlington has 2 community gardens that I know of. And I'd like to see something in the comprehensive plan that tries to get more, well, first identifies basically how many people live within, say, walking distance of a community garden. There's a debate about what that means. Maybe it's half a mile. And then try to increase the percentage of people that live within half a mile of a community garden.
Right, it's a good measure. So the last goal is opportunity oriented. That's about being a supportive, engaged member of the regional and the statewide community, and sort of hit that a little bit early on, just especially with Queen City Parkway and the connection between the city of Burlington and the state of Vermont, as well as the different entities that are around there. But any other thoughts from your neighborhood about, and I'll hit you in a second, Loretta, about that issue? I mean, about the importance of engaging on that regional and statewide scale. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Shelburne Road is a corridor, right, between communities.
Yeah.
So just by the fact of where we are, we interface with the community. And I think there's a lot that can be done to help reduce the amount of traffic on the road, like looking at park and ride lots. Where people could say a little south of South Burlington, if they're driving from Shelburne into Burlington, they could park their car and carpool with a coworker. Maybe the intersection of 189 and Shelburne Road. And I'm not thinking, gigantic, 100-car lots, but if you have, I guess, in the theme of human scale, if you have distributed resources at a smaller, maybe you got 10 or 20 car lots, but you've got 5 or 10 of them, and people can meet.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Loretta, go ahead.
I was going to follow up with the idea of the community gardens within, a half-mile walking distance for most residents, which is a fantastic idea for 20 zillion reasons. The other thing that I was thinking of, in addition to that, and it could be in conjunction with that, is a small wooded area within a half-mile walking distance of all our residents, because that's, so it's just so much cooler when you get into the woods, and the, people that work for the city or one way or another are working outdoors. If they can, duck into the woods for a little while and get cooled off, it'll make life a lot better.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts on?
I think about, again, this gets back to the transit issue, but a long time ago, the region was just Burlington, right?
A long time ago, yeah.
but mentally, the road systems were all built this way.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a new road built in Vermont probably since I don't know when, but it's a rare thing to have a new road, unless it's like just a neighborhood road or something like that. But a new actual traffic circulator road, that's never going to happen in Vermont. So we have so when you, again, it gets back to this east-west movement between Shelburne Road, and when you think about people There's no housing here. The average shouldn't, I just got the newsletter from Nancy Jenkins and flipped it over. $600,000 we're up to for Chittenden County average.
That's the median.
Yeah, in Chittenden County. So people living in hell and gone and driving up to get Shelburne Road at 89 to get over to Beta and On Logic and the existing business and still stuff in downtown. So again, we can be good regional partners by having better east-west connectivity. And if we have to do it ourselves, we do it ourselves, you know, and have a little internal circulator that's the South Burlington shuttle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Janet.
On a more contained local level, I'm thinking of the example of the Davis Center on Shelburne Road and how that was a commercial building, and it could have been another vacant one, but now it's has art classes, daycare, and a school. And those kids, I see them come on the bike path, an amenity, to Farrell Park where they sled, and they're dragging their own sleds. So it's a great example of how a commercial building has been repurposed, you know, and it's sort of like sprawl repair. And those residents are using the existing amenities, walking through the woods, kids sledding on the hills. It's you know, I'd like to see more of that. And that's opportunity oriented in my mind.
Yes. Yeah, when you put those two words together, they can mean many things. Any other thoughts, comments as we kind of wrap it up for the night? Anything someone wanted to say? Yeah, Linda.
Linda, you're muted.
You saved the best group of Southwest neighborhoods to best for last, so that's why you got so much input, which has been great. I've been learning a lot myself, and I just quickly want to put in some plugs for all of those areas that have been discussed tonight. I mean, we moved here 27 years ago, and our house was rented here off near Overlook Park. I'm not in Queen City like a lot of people here, which, by the way, I applaud all of you, and I totally support how Burton should not be putting higher ground there. It's a dangerous use near that park for us, where Red Rocks is such a gold mine for our city and for Burlington. But anyway, the what I was saying is that after we moved here, there has been an incredible amount of development that we are in a very lucky situation that we are growing. I've come from a small hometown in Maine where things are decreasing and they lost an Air Force base nearby, and things really got shuttered up. And so I think that the nice part of South Burlington is we're growing, and now we've got to try to make it as smart as we can. My input would be that while we as a community have built a lot of housing since we moved here. I mean, all the South Village, you know, over 400 units there. We've got the cider mill, Pinnacle went up. We've got more going in behind the cider mill. We've got everything on Kennedy Drive going on. But if we come back to the Southwest neighborhood, we've done a lot over here. And that's Spear Street, to me, is the most dangerous street, or one of the most dangerous streets in the city. And we could solve a lot by working on the roads there that would help the climate. We'd get more people biking safely, because you need to widen the road to a better spec to put true bike lanes on them, because I bike there almost every other day in the summertime, and it's dangerous. And I drive on that road every day also. It's incredibly dangerous, and we do need the crosswalks that other people have talked about over by Overlook Park, also going up Nolan Farm Road. But it's also wonderful that we have a Hubbard Park and field there. So I'm a big proponent of continuing all the parks that we have, making sure we're taking care of them, and making sure that we put aside more space if we can, whether it be the UVM piece that's been spoken to or the Farrell Park piece, whatever. But let me also come back and close it with one of the reasons we moved here to this particular town was for the schools. And that was 27 years ago. And not much has changed, if anything, to those schools while we've been here. And I really feel for the people that have kids in the schools now. The teachers, obviously, and the personnel make the school, but we need to upgrade those schools, and we've done a great job now of getting some votes done in the city in the last week on some big projects we need to do. And I think the next big project we need to work on is a 5 or 8 year plan within this 8-year comprehensive plan of getting some real work done on our schools to make them up to code, putting nice, solar on the roofs and things like that. If they're not in some of it, to help make and get electric buses going and those types of things. I think a real focus needs to be made on the schools, and then that trickles down to the community and makes us and continues to make us a very, very tight-knit community, and one that continues to prosper and educate the young kids like we need to do, because we're all getting older and we need these young kids to take over for us. So thank you very much for all you're doing.
Linda, I just wanted a quick clarification. The city plan will address our school system in a slightly inventory-like way, and some of our work at collaborating with the school district, but the school district also does their own strategic planning process. So I think some of the details that you're looking for actually occur in the school district's own planning. So we will include discussion of the school system and education in the city, but some of the details you're talking about capital planning and electrifying buses and things like that would be in the school district's process.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I guess the thing I could add on to that, though, as a taxpayer, and it being my biggest bill as I go into retirement, is that I want new schools, and I would pay the taxes. I think the school and the city need to come together to convince all of the community that you're going to need to spend some money to help make this happen. And I don't think the schools can do it in their own microcosm. I talk about the big capital piece, whether it's $200 million or whatever it was it like 5 or 6 years ago that they came up with some plan? So I agree that, thank you for the clarification, but I'm just hoping the city could put out, like, in the next 5 to 7, 8 years, what would the tax base need to be to help afford the capital expenditures we're going to need to help get the community going with for the school system. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to bring up, when thinking about area and collaboration, is about the Champlain Lake being part of that watershed and being the waterfront of South Burlington in this area, and the importance of that, and our wonderful brooks that run into Lake Champlain, and focusing on the health of those brooks, especially in considering changes in climate and how that will affect our small streams that run through our neighborhoods. So that, I feel like, is an important part to consider and strengthen in our city planning, and also just erosion in general. And I call it the Red Rocks Canyon. That is the road down to the Red Rocks Beach, but there's some major problem there that that type of erosion is going to be seen as we have harder storms and trees are coming down. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Nancy. So Loretta, I'll let you have the last word tonight.
So I wanted to echo what Linda was saying, and I may not represent her thoughts exactly, but I've lived in South Burlington for a long time, and in the last few years, I've noticed that there's some collaboration between the schools and the city, but the city seems to a little bit, like, well, we're going this way and the schools have their own thing. But the taxpayers look at the bottom line of their tax bills. And if they don't like what they see, then they're going to vote against usually the schools. So we can't just, like, separate ourselves. We have to support the schools in a more active way. The city has to, the city council. That's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, Loretta, and thanks, everybody. Thanks for being patient, for going over a few minutes here. Kelsey, did you want to say anything to wrap it up?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone for coming today, and everyone who's attended other meetings as well. I very much appreciate the time that you've taken out of your evenings to join us. This is, as I said, the last of the scheduled public meetings. There's still an online poll that should take about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes if you have a lot to say. On our city website, if you go to the government tab, and then there's another sub tab called City Plan 2024, it's right there. You can also email any written comments to either planning@southburlingtonvt.gov or directly to me, Kay Peterson, at southburlingtonvt.gov. Again, my name is Kelsey. You can always call our office, 846-4106. You can come stop by. We're around business hours mostly. And looking forward to any more feedback that you may have with our drafts that will be coming out in the coming weeks. The coming Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday should be addressing these are all very first preliminary drafts. They're considered working drafts. But the sections on Tuesday will be community services and energy. So that's what's coming up sort of first for Planning Commission review. And as I said, those packets are available at the same place you can find the agendas for any of our city meetings. So just thank you again for attending. Thank you for engaging with this process. And
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks, Kelsey.
Yeah, that was so.
Thanks for doing all of these, the whole series.
Especially considering
Yeah.